Have you ever felt that God is calling you to leave something and it would be absolutely outrageous for you to do so? Or perhaps you yourself have came to a point where you can start to see the grass is greener on the other side, or you are perceiving it as such, and you are having thoughts of, you know, maybe if I just cross the fence. I know I've been doing very, very well in what I'm doing now, but I think God is telling me to leave. Or perhaps you are in an absolutely atrocious situation. Perhaps you could be in a group of friends and they don't respect you hardly at all. You can find many more times when they are not listening to you than when they are listening to you. And when they do listen to you, they just berate you or talk about how, oh, that idea is foolish. And it would really be better if you would look at things this way. And then they give an example. Or perhaps you are very close to a family member, and yet you know deep, deep down that it would be better for you to leave or change the relationship and the degree to which you and this person are close, I would say. It'd be best for you to keep some distance between you and this person, we'll say, this family member. But it's very hard because you obviously are related. There is a scenario happening in my life right now wherein I am dealing with thoughts of what I have perceived as being God telling me that I am going to have to eventually leave something, or at least have my heart postured in a manner where I am open to having the ability to do so. I'm at least, how should I say that? What's a better way of saying that is I'm at least open to leaving something, right? And this sort of, I want to say, conundrum, this situation is hard for me to mentally wrap my mind around because for those that don't know, I am an IT developer, okay? And I am literally living out a life wherein I work my dream job. I am in charge of modernizing the mainframe. And in a book rags version, for those that aren't IT oriented or don't know about IT, is I work with legacy systems. They are systems where the workforce is aging and retiring. Okay, and there's not as many people in the world that know how to keep this system running. It is in what is called the mainframe, and that is something that it's programs that are used in the financial industry and the military. And basically, it's what kind of runs some of the systems run our world. Very important processes, such as, well, for instance, I'm on a credit card team and we write, maintain, and create the programs that make it so all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes when you swipe a credit card and the transactions have to go from the cardholder's account to the merchant, such as a gas station or whatnot, those processes, stuff like that. I'm in charge. I'm on a team that's in charge of writing the programs that make all that work. And my task is to modernize this system. It's to incorporate non-legacy technological benefits into this system. And it is a very nuanced and niche sort of expertise. And it is one that I've been praying for to actually enact for a long time. And it's right in front of my face. It has been presented to me as a gift in order to cherish and exercise my abilities that I've been working on. Let me restart this. I've been working on building the knowledge bases that actually are in charge of producing the work that I have to enact to fulfill the responsibilities of leading this initiative. So I have to study both non-legacy technology and legacy. So it's very unique and niche. and it is something I prayed for years, and it's right in front of my face. Yet there is scenarios happening at my job now where I think God may be posturing my heart to be open to the idea that I have to leave something that I was dreaming of doing forever, or change my perspective of it in a way that will not render me as a person that idolizes the thing that I'm working on. For instance, if you are fulfilling your perceived calling, the calling that God has given you, you can start to idolize the work that you're doing rather than idolize the God that gave it to you. And that's weird. I don't know if I've actually used the term idolizing God like in that manner where you idolize God. Usually the verbiage idol has a negative connotation to it in the Bible. Nevertheless, you can idolize the work you're doing rather than your Father in heaven. And that can lead to all sorts of problems. But if you are open to stopping the, if you are open to not going forward in your calling or the path that God has given to you, anytime He tells you to stop, then that keeps you safe from idolizing the work that He has called you to do. And when you start to feel that maybe God is telling you to leave some sort of subject matter or come to terms with an idea of yours being wrong, or maybe telling you to leave a group of friends or family, you can also have all of these secondary thoughts in your head rolling around, such as, am I misinterpreting this? Is this just a test? Is this just God putting up, let's say, a golden apple to your right when right in front of you, you're holding a regular apple? And well, it can be like Adam and Eve. There's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which you're not supposed to eat from. And there's, what was it? The tree of life, I think. And Eve goes and eats the apple from the tree that she wasn't supposed to eat from. And they were kicked out of the garden. That's when sin was brought into the world. And so you can start to see how this grass is greener on the other side sort of psychology and mindset will start to play in your head. So even when you perceive something or a feeling or a thought as coming from God, you can start to second guess it and think, what if He's testing me? What if this is actually derivative from my own selfish desires? Or what if this is the devil, the enemy, playing with me, just like he did with Eve in the garden? There's a million different things you can think about when this happens. And something that came to me when I was just sitting in church, what was it, last week? Really random. It had nothing to do with what was going on around me besides me being in church. I thought, in regard to my own scenario, which I am extremely happy with, I have desires to get to a certain title in my job, in my career, right? And when you, just a little background for context, I've been working on this project for like a year and I've done really, really great work. Okay. Genuinely. Like I know that from the feedback I have received from the experts. Okay. And in the IT world, the way that you accumulate large jumps in title and increase in financial resources allotted to you is for you to have to leave the company you are currently working in and to jump ship to another company. And then you go through the negotiation process of your salary. And that is how you acquire giant leaps. Okay. And before anyone starts getting crazy about it's all about money, God has postured my heart to view money in a certain unique way for years. I know that nothing that I have is mine. I would give it all away if He told me to. And money in itself isn't evil, but people and their relationship with it tends to be a lot of the time. With that side note, just put a sticky note in that. With that said, God can speak to my scenario and say, let's say I do feel that God has made it so my career right now is sort of the starting battery for whatever he wants to bring through me. And he is teaching me many, many things by this architectural journey. That's what I want to be as an architect someday. Okay. And all of these things that he's instilling in me, such as training interns for the first time or training other developers and working in all of these technologies and bridging the gap between legacy and non-legacy code in a unique way that is set up to be properly worked on by me based on my unique psychological makeup, honestly, and my philosophical take of the world. Like the whole project is really, it seems to be given to me by God. And there's all these different tasks that are a part of it, such as leading it, training others, developing the applications and bridging the technology to present to people that's been working the same way for 30 years. And now I have to bridge the gap between two different work ethics, two different generations. I have to make a non-legacy system. I have to make it attractive for new developers, because if I don't, the people that actually know how to run the programs and fix the problems that arise in the system, they are going to be retiring within the next 5 years or 10 years. So I have to reskin this system and incorporate current and new technological advancement into it to make it attractive to the new and current developers coming out of college. And the sort of philosophical and psychological problems that are attached to this IT endeavor is what really makes me passionate about it. And it makes me uniquely gifted and proficient at doing it. And so I say all that to say that God has made this so I, again, am very proficient at it. And I feel that it is the initial starting point for allotting a large financial resource battery, I guess, in my life. And it is also what I was trying to say. It is also teaching me all of the things such as the leadership abilities, how to bridge the gap between two different mindsets, which also comes into play to my YouTube endeavors or digital landscape endeavors, spiritual landscape, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to bridging the gap between non-believers and believers, right? Those are two different things. But I try to find a common language, or I'm trying to find a common language or a way to bridge the gap between those two sets of people, which is interesting because even though I've been a believer my whole life, I know that the way that I have been living or had been living in the past, despite being saved and accepting that Jesus Christ died on the cross, despite all of that, I know that the way I was living was more akin to a non-believer than it was an actual Christian, as it is detailed out in the Bible and the commands that God actually gave people through Jesus and his ministry and all the other various stories. So I know there's all these things that are happening in my career that pertain to everything outside of my career. I don't really look at my work and outside of work life as being separate. It all builds upon each other. And therefore, it's really hard for me to come to terms with the idea that God would ever tell me to leave something when it is that amazing. But back to what I was first stating is while I was in church, I thought of the scenario wherein Jesus said that he couldn't perform miracles in his hometown. For those that don't know, it's in Luke chapter 4, verses 24 through 30, if you want to look it up. Jesus is in his hometown where he was raised, and he states in the verse here, I'll just read it. It says, so I'll start from verse 24. It says, "Truly I tell you," he continued, "no prophet is accepted in his hometown." And that one verse right there, Jesus is inferring or stating that the reason he couldn't perform miracles in his hometown is because the people that lived there, they couldn't see him for who he was, the divine aspect of him, because they had seen him grow up from a child. Therefore, they didn't have the sort of faith that, for example, in the story of, you can look up in Matthew chapter 8, there's this centurion, Roman centurion, where he just believes that Jesus is able to heal his servant that's clear at home. And Jesus is like, I've never seen this sort of faith before in my life. And says, your servant's healed. And the Roman centurion goes home and his servant is healed. That sort of faith. Since these people have grown up with Jesus, they can't see him purely, or they won't accept what he really is in a way that would cause their faith to be something that God can use to bring about the miracles that Jesus should in that area. Does that make sense? You can relate this to your own life, and I'll relate this to my own scenario. That is very similar to why in the IT career field you have to make a jump from one company to another. And this could be true for other job fields as well. I would most likely think it is. That's also why you are able to make those huge salary jumps, because the companies that you are going to, they don't really have the full picture of you, right? It's like in what they can't see in the person, let's say in an interview scenario, if they're interviewing somebody, that applicant, the things that they can't see starts this sort of process of wonder in their mind, not in a fearful way. And I've said before in other lectures where people are afraid of the monsters in the dark because, well, let me back up. People will stay in terrible scenarios because they are more afraid of what's out there in the dark. They're more afraid of monsters in the dark than the monsters they can see right in front of them. That's why you'll stay at a job, for instance, that is absolutely terrible for you, or stay in a relationship that's terrible for you because, well, on the relational side of it, one idea could be, I may be in this and it's terrible, but it's better than being alone, or something similar to that, right? Or in the case of the job, you can think, I may be getting treated like trash, but it's better than being unemployed. And other companies will probably be just as bad. Now, the reason I don't think that really happens in an interview to applicant sort of relational scenario where you're interviewing with a company is because they also believe that their own system, that they, let's say, hypothetically, if they were to hire the individual they are interviewing, they should have some sort of faith in their own system that would cause them to think, if I would take this person who, let's say they're amazing in the interview and they hire them, they're going to think that they can actually transplant them into their system, and their system is very good. They believe in it. They have faith in it. Therefore, it's going to render that person as something even greater than the person that they are interviewing at that point in time. Does that make sense? And that is different than jumping off into the deep end of the pool. That's different. It seems different. I don't think it is, actually. There is differences to it, but in regards to Christianity, your faith should be at a point where you know that God can do good with anything. He can do anything with anything. And so you should be able to jump into the deep end of the pool with no life jacket and still believe that God will keep you afloat if you do the things that God is telling you to do. Regardless, I think that that's why that interview and applicant conversation takes place and how it actually manifests the jump in salary like it does. Because they don't have the full picture of someone like what a current employer would have on somebody. Because right now, let's say if I were to go in and say, hey, I've done X, Y, and Z thing, or I'm going to be promoted. I'm on the docket to be promoted, and I'm going to be promoted to a certain title, and it is not the title that I necessarily want. And I don't think it is the title that actually correlates with the work that I'm doing, the actual value that the work that I'm doing brings. And so I guess what I'm saying is I have to go through the whole process to get to the certain title that I want. One moment. I'm recording. I had to close my door because my roommates came home. So what I'm saying is I believe that in order to get to where God wants me to go in my career, I think that I would have to maybe leave my company in order to get there. Because I don't think that maybe my company I don't think that my company is going to be able to see me as I truly am or how God sees me. Maybe. Or here's another side of it. My heart could just be getting postured to be okay with leaving and be completely fine with actually leaving the company. That way it keeps me safe from idolizing them, and it can put me mentally in a place where I can negotiate a salary with them. Because if you are in a sort of conversation with somebody and you're trying to negotiate with them, if they know that the statement, you're going to do this or you have to leave, if they know that statement is going to cause fear in you and it's going to cause you to think, well, I can't leave, so I just have to do what they say, then there's no negotiating period. So I can see God making me actually come to terms with the idea of leaving my current scenario and a place that I love with all my heart and feel as if God put me there. I know He put me there, but He could just be posturing my heart at an angle where I am okay with leaving, because that makes it so I can actually genuinely negotiate for an X amount of salary and that sort of deal. And you can apply that in your own life. If you are not okay with leaving, let's say, a partner ever, if they start abusing you, let's say, for instance, you're screwed, right? You are. If you don't believe that you could do better or that you deserve better or that you at least shouldn't be subjected to the type of abuse they are abusing you with, then you are in really bad shape. That's a terrible place to be. Right? So you can kind of I hope that explains what I'm kind of dealing with in my head. And there's a few things that I've thought to myself. I know that Jesus also tells one of the disciples during his ministry, this is in Matthew chapter 8 as well, where he says that he gives the example of, I think, foxes. What does he say? Foxes have dens, and I think birds have nests, but a disciple has no place to lay their head. And basically, Jesus is essentially saying that disciples don't really have one home. There's a cost to following Jesus, is what I'm trying to get at. And that's actually what the little section of the verses is called. There's a cost to following Jesus. I did a whole YouTube lecture just on that. And that is very true. So, that idea pops in my head too when I'm just contemplating all this and thinking, God could be telling me that, I shouldn't idolize the place that I'm at. I should idolize. I don't like saying that word, idolize. I should be very genuinely passionate about following God's commands and being 100% selfless in what I am doing for Him at the place that He is calling me to do it. And when you start bringing in the verbiage selfless, I start thinking about, okay, if I'm being selfless, wouldn't I just stay where I am forever, despite me not having what I feel is right for me to have in regard to financial influence or title, right? And I started thinking about that, and I'd have these inner conflicts. Am I being selfish? Am I not? And then, well, I started going to places in the Bible and stories in the Bible. I thought about how, let's say Paul, for instance, he wrote many of the stories in the New Testament, many of the books. And many of them books were written from prison. They were letters. They were letters that he wrote from prison to certain churches or people. And in those letters, you can see him commanding people and being a leader. Okay. And he's telling people to do something, giving orders in a Christ-like manner, I would say. Paul is an amazing character in the Bible. And what that showed me is, despite his appearance in the world, him being in prison and jail, he still believes in who God has called him to be and who God says he is, despite what is going on around him. And he thinks that he believes that he is who God says he is, no matter where he is. So it doesn't matter if he's in prison, jail, if he's about to die. If he tells a church to do X, Y, and Z, they should do it because that is what God is telling him to do. That is him serving. It doesn't matter what he looks like. It doesn't matter how much of a fool he looks like. It doesn't matter if he's on death row. That shows believing in God. That shows in him taking into account how I thought about it is his spiritual appearance. Like there's this spiritual world that's not made up of all the things that we perceive with our five senses, natural senses. And I just try to think about what aesthetic do I have in the spiritual realmscape versus what I can see, smell, hear. Does that make sense? So that came to me, and I thought about how that relates to the scenario of leaving or not. And I would say, yes, let's say I don't get the title that I want. God could be telling me to just do what he's calling me to do despite not having the title. But there's also times when God calls you to raise your staff. For instance, in another story with Moses, he's leading the Israelites out of Egypt and they are chasing them with chariots. They see the Egyptians chasing after them. And Moses gets on his knees, starts praying to God. And God actually answers him saying, "Why are you crying out to me? Raise your staff, split the sea, go." So that's a scenario where God wants Moses to embody being a leader rather than submitting to the atrocities that the Egyptians are coming after them to enact upon them. So that shows him doing something with his own power that was allotted to him by his spiritual gifting from God. So that's completely different than just rolling over. And I don't know, that's a bad term. That's different than serving God and living out something where you look as if you are lower than what you really are when it comes to others' opinions, but you know that God wants you to do what you are currently doing. Therefore, you just go on serving him. And I think I've already been at that place. And I think I'm currently at that place, perhaps now even. But also, another thing came to me is Moses, when he first was called by God to carry out his calling, to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses didn't believe in himself. And he told God, well, first, let me back up. The verse where Moses raises his staff, I want to mention it. It's Exodus chapter 14, verses 13 through 18. And the verse I'm going to refer to now, this section in the Bible, is Exodus chapter 4, verses 10 through 17. And Moses said to the Lord, Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. The Lord said to him, Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. But Moses said, Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, What about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. There we have Moses not believing God about what God is saying about him. And if you read the book in the Bible, Exodus, and that whole story, you will see that Aaron coming there and helping Moses turned into having some problems being manifested. For instance, when Moses goes up to God to get the 10 commandments the first time and he comes back down, the people are all worshiping a false idol that Aaron actually made by melting all of their golden earrings and other jewelry. And if you can argue if Aaron was never there, that would have never happened. So there was consequences to Moses not believing God to give him the ability to carry out his calling. Moses didn't believe in his own ability to speak. He must have a speech impediment or something, or just a lack of confidence. It could have came from him. Perhaps as a child, he was made fun of for the way he spoke, and he just hung on to that belief forever. You can apply that to many different cases in your life. And so I think about that in relation to, let's say, a scenario where you feel God is calling you to leave, and sometimes you just have to believe in yourself to either leave the territory that you are so confident in right now in order to get to where God is calling you to, or you have to be confident in God's ability to hold you up as you bear all of the weight from carrying out the responsibilities in the said place that you are at. There's two different options there. Well, there's more than just two. I'm not going to be an idiot and say there's only two. And another thing that came to me about this sort of conundrum was, I was led to this position and I was given the opportunity to work within it. It's very similar to, let's say everyone's heard that saying where you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And that's true. Now, those that were in charge of putting me in the position I am, they led me to the stream, but they couldn't force me to drink. I had to do that with the power of God and the gifts and talents He's given me. Therefore, I should be confident in thinking that I can handle a sort of elevation in title and responsibilities and all of the things that would come from me getting promoted to said title that I want. And I don't think that I should be afraid of leaving where I am to go somewhere else, and even interacting with all of the variables in the background that I have no idea what they're like. Like, I'm very good at my job now, but if I go somewhere else, who knows what will happen? I might just get consumed by the darkness and everything that I don't know. But I think I need to have confidence in who God has made me to be. I was led to the water and I drank it myself. Well, I don't want to say myself. It's always God working through me and my ability to listen to Him. And this whole time, and that, what I'm saying is that stops me from really conceptually falling into the trap of, you're just being selfish, Cody. You're just being selfish. There's something to be said about raising your staff like Moses did, where God told Moses, stop crying to him, just raise your staff and do it. Or Moses not believing in himself and who he was, or his ability to do something God's calling him to do. That relates to having the fear of leaving somewhere, because God could tell you to leave something you're very comfortable in doing, but you won't do it because of the unknown, or because you love doing what you're currently doing. And I know that if I were to acquire this increase in financial resources, what I would do with it, I guess I should say, I maybe should have started with that, is I would use it to serve others. My parents are getting to the point now where they are getting to retirement age. And if I'm honest with myself, if I was willing to jump companies, I could get a huge increase in salary in the next few years, or next year, or now. Or maybe God will make a way for me to do it in my current company now. But it is starting to weigh on my mind. The idea is weighing on my heart, where I want to take care of my parents now. And the best way I can do it is with the gifts that God has given me, and with the heart that he has formed me to be a servant with. I guess he has given me the servant's heart. I love serving people. I love giving, resources to those that need it. And I mean financially, or in any other sort of resource. The financial is just one, which I'll just say a caveat. You can't fix everything with money. There's some people where, let's say they need money very bad. If you were to give them $1 million, they would end up bankrupt and worse off than what they started with. What they started off when they were in debt. That's what I would say. You should give people and provide for others as much as they need it, to the point where they can start carrying their own cross and develop the skills to start operating independently in life. That's something I learned from Jordan Peterson, who's right there in the background, if you can see that picture. That's from the We Who Wrestle with God tour. He's an amazing man. Nevertheless, I know it's hard when it comes to these sort of decisions, and I don't know what's going to happen. Right now, I'm open to anything, is really what I mean. I am open to anything. And this is something you can take and to apply in your own life. The way you can discern and hear from God in these scenarios is you have to be willing to submit your own ideas and your sort of philosophical takes and perspectives to others, to God first, and then listen from him, and then submit it to others and offer up your ideas in a way where you are open to them being criticized and ridiculed, and filtered through other mental or other understandings, like psychological knowledge bases, is how I think of people's opinions. When I present an idea to somebody, let's say I go to ask someone, should I leave my company? And this is the scenario, X, Y, and Z is happening, blah, 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 blah. I then would hear the feedback from them, and I have to be genuinely willing to listen to them and consider that they may be right and I may be wrong. I have to be willing to learn. That is something that's very lost in our day and age. And I have to be willing to listen to God and have him tell me I'm wrong. Otherwise, how am I ever going to be anything? How am I ever going to be a greater servant to him? Ever. And that's something that I learned. I'm studying Plato right now. I'm listening to some lectures about it through Peterson Academy. And there is a dialogue, for those that don't know who Plato was. I'm sure everybody does, but he was a philosopher way back in the day. And what we have from him are these stories that are called dialogues. And in one of the stories called Parmenides, the main character, Socrates, who used to be his teacher but has since deceased, And in all of these dialogues, he has this character, Socrates, sort of state his own ideas. It's like that's Plato, but not in some of them. But there's far more than that. And I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole. But in one of these dialogues called Parmenides, Socrates proposes this idea, which is Plato's like biggest idea. Okay. It's like the theory of ideas, I think it's called. Is that what I have in my notes here? Yeah, it's his. What I'm saying is this is basically his passion project, okay? The accumulation of his work at this time. And he has this character in his story, Socrates, put it up for debate, and he argues with another person. He debates it. And he ends up losing. He loses the debate. And you can ask yourself after you read the dialogue is, why would he do that? Why would he propose his own idea in that story like that and have it being argued for and then have someone argue against it and win? He's basically entailing that he himself is wrong through the depiction of these characters and what happens in the story. Why? And it's because of a great lesson to be learned from that interaction is that story. In order for you to know that you are right and living a life on a path that is congruent to how God is calling you to live, and just in a non-Christian manner, a path that is you are living a life on with a trajectory towards the truth and not just selfish ignorance, and not just fueled by selfish ignorance. You have to be willing to submit your ideas to be ridiculed and criticized and be open to being wrong in order for you to learn. Otherwise, you don't even know if you're right if you're not willing to really give your ideas up like that, right? And that's what I think with God as well. I submit my ideas to him, and then sometimes he speaks to me what I perceive as being directly through the Holy Spirit. Other times he speaks to me through other people or interacting with other subject matter in the world. It could be anything. And the only way I can really hear from him and actually change is to think that I am open to being wrong. And you are in a world of hurt if you think that God is never going to use another person to tell you that you are wrong, or if you are never going to be wrong about something you are very passionate about. There's been many ideas and philosophies that I have embodied in the world that were wrong for years. And I had to be okay with looking like a fool. Nowadays, God has brought me to the point where I love being wrong because it means that I am no longer going to move forward with the false understanding that I previously was. And that renders me as a person that can serve God to a greater capacity and expand my gifts and my expertise in the areas God is calling me to, and feel more fulfilled than any other previous moment in my life. When you serve others selflessly and you serve God with all your heart in a way that makes you okay with being wrong, it opens up a whole different world. You don't care about looking like an idiot. It's awesome. And what's ironic is you don't really, if you start to really come to terms with, I could be wrong, and you are genuinely okay with it, you don't look like an idiot anyway. People respect that because not many people actually have the courage to do that. It's amazing. So that is another thing that comes into play when it comes to if God is asking you to leave something, no matter what, be open to being wrong about your understanding of the current situation and continually go back to God and ask for his guidance and help. And if you don't hear anything, ask other people, submit your ideas to them, and just also go back to the word, theology. You can also gather knowledge and wisdom from other places. Like in the example of myself, I'm studying Plato right now for fun. Not, well, fun. And even in my job every day or when I'm creating art, I I think about these things and I offer up my ideas to a sort of hmm, a sort of metaphorical self that is outside of me. And I try to think about everything from a third person perspective. And I think if everything that I perceive as God telling me to do right now, or the end goal of everything, or like the picture of the great sun in the horizon, like coming to the golden kingdom, coming to the promised land, is what I would say. If everything I perceive as God leading me to do, if everything He has told me is going to come to pass, if that's true 100%, how would I act? And are those actions are those actions enacted in a similar manner as someone who would go on with the decision I am about to make to either leave something or not? I think about things like that. And I also obviously start with God, go to other people, be okay with being wrong. And God will give you the answer. And sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith and just go. And even if you take the wrong path, God will reroute you. So, what I will leave you with is stating, don't be afraid of leaving things, because many, many stories in the Bible, people have to leave places that they are comfortable with. Jesus states that disciples have no place to lay their head. Jesus couldn't perform miracles in his hometown because of the idea and the box that they put Jesus in based on who they seen him as growing up. And if they did that with Jesus, they can do that with you. And I think that it is maybe a requirement of apostles to leave things. Jesus stating no disciple has a place to lay their head really had me thinking, yeah, I know that in the IT career field, you get huge increases in salary and responsibility and fulfillment by getting, to a different place in your career that you are dreaming of, by leaving a company and going to another one. But that's so representative of leaving something. And with Jesus telling disciples that they have no place to lay their head, maybe it's a requirement for disciples to leave something. And of course, this just came to me literally right now, real time. That is 100% absolutely true, because even if you aren't leaving something physically, you always are required to leave things psychologically and spiritually, mentally, right? Psychologically and mentally are the same thing. Anyway, you always have to leave something. Usually leaving things mentally is harder than physically sometimes. So I'll leave you with the encouragement of asking God where you should go, and be okay with your current understanding being wrong, and be willing to listen and to lower yourself before Him to hear His word and instruction. And if you don't hear anything, you can go to people. He may instruct you to go to somebody, actually, and then carry your cross and have faith in making the big jump should He call you to leave. And if not, continue carrying it in the manner you are now. I hope this has helped you, and I hope it is advantageous to your life. Thank you so much if you listened to this whole time for 49 minutes. I have been emphatically working on my speaking ability, and I think it is actually starting to pay off. I have a big presentation to give at my job, and it's going to be amazing. I've been practicing speaking a lot. Let me know how it's going. I love you and I thank you. Please reach out to me if you have any questions, and God bless you. And if you have any questions about God or Jesus, please reach out to me. That's all for today. I'll see you next time.